The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
You're listening to the Everyday Therapy Podcast. I'm JC Rader.
And I'm Julianne Schroeder.
And we're therapists bringing you honest conversations around emotional wellness and self-development.
Inspired by our personal experiences in therapy and because of our clients, we realize therapy has so much to offer both on and off the couch. Listen for tips and tools to navigate all the challenges that life throws your way.
To give us feedback on topics and guests, or for more information on our community events, counseling, or online services, contact us at everydaytherapypodcast.com. Hello, let's jump right into our sponsors, shall we?
Let's do it.
Lifeology is a group private practice here in the heart of Dallas, and there are locations all over. So Austin, Texas, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Cedar Hill, Fort Worth, they're everywhere. And we really trust them. They have quality counselors there. A bunch of our friends work there, or colleagues, shall I say?
Both, maybe.
Yes,
that counts.
yeah. And anytime a friend asks me, can you refer me to a therapist, I refer them to Lifeology. It's just a company that I really trust and admire. But they have appointments that early morning times, evening times, and
Weekends.
on the weekends, which is
incredible.
Seriously, it's hard to take clients on the evenings and weekends. So, and they also start pricing at $35 and it goes up based on their training and knowledge and skill level as a therapist. So they're incredible. Check them out. The mission of our podcast is to spread information about therapy all over. And so they're a great resource for creative solutions to stuck problems.
Yes, and on that vein, one of their creative solutions to be able to address overall emotional and mental well-being is through the Lifeology Institute of Psychotherapeutic Yoga.
Yes, you nail it every time. It's such a mouthful.
I always get a little bit nervous. But LISP, we also are graduates of LISP, and I am on staff. And it really is merging the Eastern and Western approach to healing and being able to address the mind and the body. And so they are having a new cycle of programming for a 200-hour teacher programming.
Yes, Yoga Alliance certified. So if you've ever thought about being a yoga teacher to teach yoga or just for your personal yoga practice, mental health, this is the place to go.
Sure. Yes. And this next cycle starting in May, we're really looking to find therapists that are wanting to extend the reach with clients because we know sometimes that talk therapy is limited.
Yeah. So to have like like you said, full mind-body approach.
Yes.
So
check them out, thelispyschool.com.
And shall we jump into our topic and meet our guest for the day?
Oh my gosh, she's a VIP, y'all.
Yes, we're so excited. So we have Dr. Melody Moore on today. And where is she? Can we get her on, Ziggy? There she is. Yay. Hello. So Melody, you are a yoga teacher. You're a clinical psychologist. You're a writer, a speaker. I mean, what do you not do? I feel like you do everything. I'm sure there's something I'm missing too. Okay. You probably have somebody to do that for you.
But you can delegate. It all works.
Yeah, and we've known you for a long time. I mean, we've gone to a yoga retreat with you. You're our business coach. I mean, we follow you on social media, and you're just so inspiring. So we're so excited to have you on today.
Deeply honored.
So thrilled to be here. I love that the two of you have this podcast, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Our honor. Yes. And today's topic, we're going to dive in and, as Melody said, get gritty earlier, get real in talking about self-forgiveness and what gets in the way.
Yeah. So Melody, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, like how you got started in this psychology world, all that jazz?
I don't know if the two of you feel this way. I think the reasons I knew that I went in to becoming a therapist have nothing to do with the actual reasons I was going into becoming a therapist.
Oh, for
What
sure.
I knew at the time was that I was so curious about my family system, how I was so different from my sister, how the things that were being told to me were true and real in my family growing up were not what my body was experiencing as being true and real, and how to sort out all these various and conflicting parts of myself. What I discovered while in graduate school, and certainly after while in practice, was that I was craving my own healing. I was craving my own self-love and acknowledgement of various aspects of me that had been lost along the way or had been discouraged along the way by me or by society. And so I really feel like I entered out of a karma, a calling, and because I really needed to heal, I really needed to bring all the parts of myself together and integrate so that I could offer that kind of wholeness to people who come across my path.
I love that honesty because I feel like so many people go into our field for that, for healing. And there's a little bit of denial initially. And maybe you don't really know that you're going into it, for yourself ultimately. And it is to help other people. But yeah, there's like healing that has to be done initially within yourself. So
Yeah, and our clients benefit, right? Our clients completely benefit almost off the backs of our own inner work and our own willingness to show up in therapy rooms and have our own therapist. And then they never probably know about any of that, but I believe they can feel it when they're in the room with us. They can feel the authenticity and feel the knowing and feel the self-compassion that we're then able to give away.
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a level of being able to understand and really connect in that way that's unlike any other, I think.
Yeah. And we forgot to mention, Melody, that you're also a social entrepreneur.
And the founder of Embody Love Movement, which is near and dear to my heart. How could we forget that? So.
Yes.
All of that, and that work too comes from my own need for inner healing. My interest in helping people recover from negative body image and from eating disorders is because of my own struggle with those things. And I believe that we are exactly who should be reaching in the communities where we ourselves have been and recognize this could have devastated my sense of self-worth. It really could have. And so I can be in the presence of other people in that struggle, or potentially who would be taken down by something like that kind of negative, critical, internal dialogue, and get it and know and see, I'm not better than you or an expert, I know more than you do. I get it. And so me too, I can be in this exchange. That's why Embody Love Movement's near and dear to my heart as well, because I am every single one of the people who gets to benefit from it.
Absolutely.
Sitting in the me too.
Yeah. Can you share how do you describe Embody Love Movement to people?
Well, our mission, which I think both of you know, is to empower girls and women. And I really believe to create space for them to empower themselves, to celebrate their inner beauty, to commit to kindness, and to contribute to meaningful change in the world. And we do that by providing programming, age-based programming, from 3-hour workshops to conversations to camps to retreats. So there are all kinds of ways that we bring in small circles of girls and women through facilitation, through trained facilitators who create a way of de-shaming anyone who's feeling like their negative body image is somehow because of them or they're at fault. And a community where conversations can be had that feel brave and that feel full of compassion to help them reimagine what it looks like to be able to own their brilliance, their capacity, their beauty from the inside out, and to see that if we could use the limited amount of time and of space and of energy that each of us has to stop beating ourselves up, to stop the comparison game, to stop finding the ways in which we are imperfect, and instead to recognize how we can contribute uniquely to what our family needs, our community needs, or the world needs, we've got it. We've got it. So it's really about creating spaces for people to have realizations and open up to something that I believe we have within us. We just have been given messaging and messaging and messaging from our culture that gets in the way. So there's a long answer, but for me, Embody Love Movement is like, remember, we're in this together. We girls and women are in this together, and the boys and men who support us and people who are gender fluid who support us in calling back our power and remembering who we are.
Yes, I know.
I was like, bring out the Kleenexes. I know that I'm going to tear up and cry at some point. Yeah. But I mean, I think this is also deeply meaningful to me. And you speak to us. You speak to us.
Yeah, it's just so much. It sounds like just reprogramming the brain from unconscious messaging that we get. And I feel like the world would be a totally different place if everyone could go through Embody Love Movement programs. Like, I just wish we could gift that to like every female or male, just everyone.
Yeah, and therapy and yoga. Starting young.
Yes, yes. That's what we're trying to do, and why you two being a part of it is so important. And anybody listening who wants to become a trained facilitator, like, one person cannot manage to, like you said, JC, hold the space for everyone to go through this program. But I hold the vision and the faith that hundreds could become thousands of facilitators, and that could become 100,000 facilitators that could shift the way that all of us are thinking and feeling about who we are, and therefore shift our perspective of how we see others.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we will definitely link that in the show notes, link at Embody Love Movement in the show notes so that people can find that. I know that that's not what we're talking about today, but it is so important to us and to our community. So thank you for sharing about that. But yeah, we're talking about forgiveness today, which I found you on Insight Timer. I feel like I should have known that you were on there. That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, let me know if either of you want to be on there and I can hook you up. I love that app.
Yes.
I think it's really useful. I listen to it myself often.
Same.
And I did that forgiveness meditation during a moment where I was really struggling to forgive myself with something. And I thought, I'm going to say this out loud, as maybe other people could be helped in this process too.
Yeah. Well, tell us, how do you define forgiveness to your clients, to yourself? Can you define that for us?
It's a really good question. I don't know if I've ever defined it. Forgiveness is a grace, a letting go, a willingness to see a situation differently, which is also a definition of a miracle. It's being in the present moment, because everything that we are holding on to, whether it's resentment toward ourselves or somebody else, always has to do with the past. So maybe all of those things in a combination, that it's present moment plus grace plus a willingness to see the situation differently.
I love that idea of reframing it and seeing a situation differently. And maybe when I hear the word let go, and it seems, I think, sometimes cliche to people, but be able to let go of that perspective and look at it with compassion and grace, like you said. I think that's a wonderful way to look at it.
Yeah, and just the power, like you said, it can be cliche of saying, like, just let go, like to yourself or to other people, but to really feel the power of letting go is so incredible.
The power in the gift, right? Because as we refuse forgiveness, we imprison ourselves to the past. And we are the ones, whether it's not being able to forgive ourselves or somebody else, that are suffering in that lack of willingness or lack of capability to forgive. And so, yes, there's an empowerment and a liberation to setting our hearts in the direction of forgiveness.
Yeah. I forget who says this quote, but they say that resentment is like taking poison and drinking it yourself and hoping somebody else is, hurting after doing it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's so true. What you just said of like an imprisonment.
Mm-hmm. I think the Buddha is quoted.
Oh, is that Buddha? Someone
who knows really who said it. Yeah. It's one of those, he gets quoted for saying a lot of things. I'm not sure whether or not he said.
Yeah, well, should we look at, I guess, the challenges in what makes forgiveness possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing, and I learned this from Jack Kornfield, is
Love him.
turning your heart in the direction of forgiveness. Because I think one of the things that makes it impossible is this thinking that it's a light switch. And like you were saying, Josie, okay, I'll just let go. Like it's not that simple. We get really committed to the story and stuck in story, and we get really loyal to our suffering, and we get really confused about what's condoning and what's forgiving. So there are so many obstacles to forgiveness. The possibilities are recognizing that it is a process. Forgiveness is not a one-off decision made. It's a commitment and a willingness to show up with an open heart again and again and again in present moment experience to seeing the situation differently. That's really important. It's also necessary to recognize condoning is not forgiving and forgiving is not condoning. So if I'm holding a resentment toward you for an action that you took, that I see myself as the victim, or I was the victim, period, which those really are the same thing, but that can be hard to differentiate when you're sitting in the suffering. I have to understand that I don't need ever to condone your behavior to forgive you. It could have been wrong, unjust, unfair, illegal. I don't have to say that it was okay that you treated me or somebody else that way. It could both never be okay to act in that way or behave in a particular way, and I can forgive you because the forgiveness is for me. The condoning may or may not be for you. The pardoning may or may not be for you, but the forgiveness is for me. And that's the same thing if I'm working towards self-forgiveness against an action that feels completely out of integrity to me, or a struggle that I'm having with the way that I've been behaving even up until 1 second ago. I think that can be really difficult. It's the same thing is true. I don't have to condone my action to forgive it. And I think a lot of people get tripped up there. Absolutely. I just can't forgive myself. It wasn't okay. I caused all this harm. Yeah, you did. And part of being able to forgive myself for something like that is the capacity to see I am not that behavior. I'm not identified with it. We know that's shame. And that's where shame and guilt are differentiated. I'm not that behavior. And so even the fact that I can see that it was wrong means I can forgive it because it isn't who I am. I don't ever have to condone it, and I don't ever have to do it again. And that differentiation actually allows the capacity for forgiveness.
Do you think that people hold on to this idea that punishing themselves and staying in this shame is going to, I guess, somehow prevent any further harm?
I do think so. And it's ironic because the opposite is actually true. Shame is the black tar over growth or transformation. Shame shuts it down, right? When we hold shame against ourselves for anything, a core of shame or shame about a particular action or a set of actions, the way we've treated ourselves or other people or the planet or whatever, we are recommitting. That's the way that works. So we get in a shame spiral and we're actually recommitting to those same behaviors because we identify as them. And then we're not able to have that differentiator of there is a way I could behave. There is a choice I could make to do that thing or be that way. Or there's another opportunity. And I think another part of it is we don't have enough compassion, meaning we don't always recognize that we are human beings and therefore we are on a growth trajectory all the time if we choose to be growing. And that means we didn't always have the level of awareness and we didn't always have the tools that we have today. So it's so easy in retrospect to look back. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I set myself up for that. I can't believe I repeated that behavior. But that's not looking at from that level of awareness and those set of tools at that age and that context, that was your best. That was it. It might have been enough, but it was also your best. Knowing today you could do differently also comes with because you have more awareness and you have more tools and there's a different context entirely. So I learned from my friend and colleague, Roth Gates, who's an amazing yoga teacher. I'm allowed to be human. I'm allowed to make mistakes, and I'm allowed to be a learner in this lifetime. And generally we learn because we did something. It didn't feel like it was an integrity with who we are, who we want to be, or who we want to show ourselves as in the world. And so we change. But if we get stuck in that, I don't like that about myself, and the shame, then we just start spiraling. So we're actually recommitting to doing more of the same shameful behavior. It's kind of easy to see if you put it into context. Somebody who's really upset with the way that they're treating their body, for example, I don't like that I am not allowing myself any movement. I'm mad at myself about that. I haven't moved in forever, haven't given myself any activity, any joyful movement, anything that looks like a practice of dancing or yoga or running or walking or anything. That mindset is more likely not to allow themselves the capacity to move and to breathe and to feel joyful and happy in their body, because the mindset's going to turn toward doing less.
Yeah, that makes so much sense with that example. Could you give an example of the mindset that would kind of shift for that and be forgiving to allow that change to happen?
Yeah, it's that going back to present moment. So if I'm waking up with I'm so frustrated with myself, for me, having a yoga practice is necessary for me to not be in, can I say asshole?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. And you can. We're
You
real
have permission.
I don't want to be an asshole. Ask anybody who is close to me. I probably need to get on my yoga mat and practice yoga. I wasn't born kind. I need to really work out the tension and get there so that I can be less reactive and more responsive and responsible. So for me, if I'm beating myself up that I didn't practice all week, like I said, the likelihood of me practicing today is nil. However, if I can wake up with, it's a new moment. Right now, the only thing that is, Atha Yoga Anushasanam, for the yogis out there, the only thing there is this very moment. And I don't have to hold on to and attach myself to the fact that the last 10 days involved no movement to me, or no something that makes me feel open and alive and energized. That's over. It just isn't here. It's not in this moment. I could have practiced every day for the last 10 days. So it's not, if I don't allow that to impact my choice here, now, in this moment, and offer some compassion instead of shame and self-beat and self-degradation, then I'm much more likely to say, you know what, you're human. Whatever was happening. Here you are. And right now, I'm just going to love you enough to encourage you to roll out your mat and be really grateful for these first 2 steps you've taken to pick up the yoga. You did that. And just because...
Good job.
Good job. Yeah, you did it. You picked up your mat. Now let's see if you can roll it out. And really, I'm making light of it, but really be grateful for the action that I'm taking that is in alignment with my values or is in alignment with what's important to me. It's much more likely I'm going to walk myself into a person that I want to become, walk my behavior into something that I'm proud of and don't have regret over and don't create more resentment over. And so I have less shame to then sift through the residue and find more forgiveness.
Sure.
Yeah. I love this quote from somebody brilliant. I think this is you, Melody, where you said, every exhale is a chance for self-forgiveness.
I did say that, that I heard it first.
Oh, you heard it? Okay.
I heard
We're
it.
just quoting quotes.
Yeah,
we did our research. I just want to let you know.
Yes. I think I wrote it in a book about yoga and eating disorders or something. But I quote in that book that Lisa Coyle said that to me, who is a yoga teacher in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And a really wonderful, she just happened to say it in class. It was one of those moments of that's it. Wow. I don't know where she heard it or if she came up with it herself, but it is true. Every exhale is an opportunity to forgive. How wonderful. How wonderful that even in this moment.
Gosh, yeah. Right. There's so many opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah. And another quote from you that maybe you're quoting somebody else is, you were saying this earlier that you said you did the best you could with what you had, I believe is what I read you say somewhere, of talking about your past and just being able to forgive yourself. Do you remember saying that?
Probably, because I think that that's the case, that any time we are acting out of our own integrity. Very likely the decision we're making is based on our little girl or our little boy or our little they or them trying to navigate the circumstances and survive. And very often we're acting out of trauma. We're acting out of a place of being completely overwhelmed and all systems are firing and we just want love, belonging, to be safe. And so often our actions are a mess. I know mine have been, and that may be what you've alluded to. And I tell this story often, when I was 29 years old, I was married and I had an affair and I broke every part of my integrity in that action. I was not someone who consistently lied or felt comfortable being a betrayer. And for me, I broke my own heart. I hurt my ex-wife and I hurt our family and so many other folks along the way because of the decision that I made to lie and to have an extramarital affair. And she was able to forgive me long before I could forgive myself because my action created so much self-hate and so much self-beat. And really it created a dark place within me because I was so far out of integrity with what my values are. And I had to, in order to find forgiveness for myself, which for me took about 7 years. That's why I'm saying forgiveness is a process. When you break your own heart, it's not so simple, and at least not in my experience, to like, okay. In fact, I would worry about that if that were someone's experience doing so, like, really. It's easy to go back into a behavior like that because we don't want to look at how terrible it was. It's the same thing with breaking through, I believe, any addiction. It's so hard to take that inventory for folks that are courageous enough to go through something like 12 steps, to really take that inventory in step 4. This is all the harm I've caused. And for me, that was really necessary for me to see this is all the harm I've caused, not only to others, but to myself, because now I hate me. Now that I did this thing, I actually hate myself and I don't feel like I deserve love. I don't feel like I belong. For me, I don't feel like I should be a therapist because I messed up my own life so terribly. How dare I sit in the space of somebody else and offer any kind of support or help because I'm crumbling here. And so for me, part of being able to forgive myself through those years of working toward it was seeing, at the level I was operating at the time, that was my best, which sounds really hard to say. It's like, you've got to be kidding, but I'm not.
Oh, yeah.
I'm actually not. I was acting out of a 2-year-old who wanted love and nurturing and belonging and to be seen. I was acting out of a narcissistic wound. I was acting out of places that I hope I don't hold within me today, or that if I do, I can greet with soothing and with care and with tenderness and not allow those places in me ever to be in charge of something like decision-making on a behavior. But looking back then, I have to recognize the tools I had available were really limited. The level of awareness that I had available to me was really limited. And that's where condoning comes in. I do not condone affairs. I could never support someone. And I've had, ironically, friends, because these things do happen, come to me and say, do you think I should do this? And I'm like, I could not wave a red flag any brighter or any more burning. No, not only because you're going to hurt your person, you'll hate yourself. You do not want to set yourself up for that kind of self-hate. Please believe me, right? But that was hard for me to understand. I could forgive myself and not condone an extramarital affair, a betrayal, a lie of any kind. That's not my value. But I had to detach who I am from an action that I took, from a mistake that I made, from a choice that I was fully aware of at the time, not aware of how badly it was going to hurt all the people around me, including myself. But I was aware I was making that choice. It was nobody's fault but mine. I was totally responsible for it. But I had to see condoning the behavior is not the same thing as finding grace and finding forgiveness for myself in the present moment, recognizing I'm still deserving of love no matter what. And it is, I didn't see this, of course, at the time, but it is one of the things that now, as a therapist and as a yoga teacher, it does allow me to sit in the presence of other people who have caused themselves or others incredible pain and know, and hold that me too, but you aren't that choice. You aren't that mistake. You aren't that that label of violator or robber or stealer or cheater or gambler or addict. We aren't the things that we've done. We are at our essence love and lovable, and having an attitude of forgiveness, holding open compassion allows for each of us to come home to that truth and not have to stay with behaviors that are causing us so much harm and heartbreak.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, just in my own work, like personally as well as with clients, in terms of really embodying and tapping into that compassion, I see, and I would love to hear your thoughts, Melody, just about how some can confuse compassion with justification and then thus condoning. Do you see that?
Yeah, or even just the fear that if I have compassion, I am condoning. Yeah. It's a lot to tease apart. I get it. It took me a long years. It's difficult. I think one of the things that helped me is having a different experience of myself. Like, it would have been very difficult for me to be in forgiveness of cheating if I kept cheating. Right? There's a quote from Marianne Williamson where she says, if being in your presence threatens my capacity to forgive you, I can't be in your presence. And I feel that same way about me. If me doing the same behavior that I'm struggling to forgive, there's no way I could forgive it. I'm still in the action of it. So I think there's something being egocentric. Like, I'm doing this thing and I don't like it, but I'm not really totally clear that it's distinct from my integrity and it being egocentric. I'm doing this thing and I am not comfortable with it. I don't like it, don't want to do it. I was having a conversation with a client a couple of days ago and she was like, I'm scared too, but I want to talk to you about my relationship to weed. I think I'm smoking too much weed. I'm a college student. Okay, it's egocentric. It's or dystonic. She's now getting a little sense of, this isn't something I'm proud of. I don't think my behavior is in alignment with my value system. A tiny bit. Yeah. So I think it's hard to tease apart, but we actually have to stop doing the thing that we're mad at ourselves about in order to approach forgiveness. It's just the two things. It doesn't really feel embodied if they're just interweaving and overlaying. I did it. I forgive myself. I did it. I forgive myself. Like, really? I don't know that that's actual forgiveness or compassion, but justification. Where do you see it coming up? Where somebody's like, if I condone it, I'm justifying it. And then how does that happen?
Yeah, I'm like struggling to think of a specific example. But I mean, I think it just latches on this belief, like, I should have stopped this from even happening is kind of, I think, what tends to play out. Like, they somehow should have been all knowing and been able to have the tools in the moment to stop it. So I think it really kind of comes more from regret and, just the acknowledgement of that.
Yeah. And I see that. I guess I hear that justification sometimes when somebody has been harmed by somebody else. I should have seen it coming, especially things like sexual assault, where it's like taking on the shame that actually the blame belongs elsewhere. But as we know about victims of sexual assault and sexual violence, very often I'm going to take that blame and that shame upon myself, which is so much work to have to tease apart and recognize there's actually nothing here to forgive because you weren't wrong in the first place. The work is putting the blame back where it goes, if that's helpful. I think that's our job as therapists, helping folks work through, like, hold on. This isn't even yours. This isn't forgiveness work. This is distinct.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to ask you about and to talk a little bit more about this. In your meditation, you talk about grace being like air, and we can just like acknowledge it like it's always there for us. And I just love that imagery of grace is just like air, it's always there. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that just came to me as I told you earlier, I was like talking myself through that meditation because I was upset with myself about I had hurt a friend and I didn't realize I had hurt her. But when she told me the way in which she perceived my behavior and was hurtful. I was so devastated because that was not my intention. And so it was like real time. And I'd been working on forgiving myself for actions that caused her harm for maybe a couple of weeks. And I was like, I'm going to talk through this out loud, because what I know through my process of forgiving myself for my affair is it takes time. Again, it's a process. It is not like,
That's
it's
so
not
important to acknowledge. Yeah.
time. It's turning my heart in the direction of forgiveness. I'm going to keep coming back to this work. And so I thought, I'm just going to offer myself this meditation out loud, and I'm going to record it, because what I know about my own life is when I go through something, I cannot be the only one. And I think that actually helps as having a mindset of grace too, to recognize surely I'm not the only person, right? When I was in the self-beat about my affair, I was telling myself, I made up affairs. I'm the only one that's ever done this. And the truth is that is not true. And every time I talk about it, I hear from somebody else. It's like, thank you for naming that. I never could tell anybody because the shame has them wrapped in silence and in guilt. So in that moment where I was sitting in my bedroom in Santa Monica, offering myself that meditation, it just occurred to me as I started just with grounding and breathing that grace is like that. We don't have to earn it. Like, we don't have to earn through our actions the capacity to take another breath. We don't work toward it and then we get a certain amount, offered to us. It's just, thankfully, as long as we take care of this planet, it's just there, and it doesn't discriminate around orientation or race or background or actions. It's just available. We can take a deep breath unless we have some kind of inhibiting factor that doesn't allow that. And how wonderful. We get to take a deep breath. And grace operates the same way. All of us are welcome to forgiveness. Forgiveness too doesn't discriminate. It's for us. It's hoping that we show up to it and we meet grace with an open heart and an awareness that we aren't separate, which goes back to, I believe, a yogic understanding of we aren't separate from one another. You and I, we are each other. There's a saying in South Africa, Ubuntu, I am because you are. And there's a Native American saying, I am because of you. And one of the things shame does is it snatches us out of that truth, shrouds us in this myth of I'm separate. I'm alone. I'm the worst. I'm the only person that would do something so horrible. It takes away the truth of, no, I am just like you. I am you. We are interconnected. We are interdependent. We're here in connection of each other and with each other. So that practice of I can arrive to grace just like anyone else can. I don't get more of it. I don't have less of it. There's no predetermined past that is a setup for. So I get the grace, or I get the compassion, or I get the forgiveness. We all do. It's our own willingness to see it differently, to open up to the truth that me too, no matter what I've done, no matter who I've hurt, no matter how awful I may have been, in this moment, there is an opportunity to surrender to what's real, which is love. And I am a part of that love. I belong to that love, to this community of humanity, and to whatever we perceive as God or truth and love in addition to that.
I love that. It's just so empowering. Whenever I heard that, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so true. And I've just never heard it in that way before. So yeah, thanks for going through that with your friend and creating the meditation to give that to everyone. So I guess, yeah, one thing that I struggle with, and it's been really loud lately, I'm just a really sensitive person. We talked about highly sensitive people recently on the podcast, and I definitely identify that way, and just feel like my feelings get hurt on a regular basis. So, and I find myself kind of ruminating on what people did to hurt me. And it could be very like things that I can acknowledge are kind of irrational. Like, I know they were intentionally trying to hurt me. What are some practical tips that like myself could use, or our listeners.
She'll bill you later.
Yeah.
Or you can bill her later.
Yeah, I'll bill you for helping me, Melody. But yeah, what are some practical tips? I heard some things in the words that you were saying that were just so powerful, but I guess just like helping us break it down to like really get it like along our practice of it. It sounds like just like going to the gym, you're building your muscles, you're building that access to forgiveness and like knowing how to tap into it and do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think for Julianne and I were talking about this recently too, for highly sensitive folks to be able, first of all, to recognize the gift, the gifts of being able to have empathy, the gifts of being open-hearted, and the capacity then to send out that kind of love and kindness and goodwill to others because you have a sensitivity to understanding what emotions feel like and knowing that other people too, other people too suffer. So every time we're suffering for any reason, it is that acknowledgement of our own humanity and how connected we are. Yesterday I was grieving my dad's birthday. He's not with us anymore on this earth, but he would have been 78. And I just like, the day was so heavy. And part of grieving to me is that recognition of all the other people who grieve, all the loss, that I'm connected to them through the capacity to grieve. So just recognizing my sensitivity is a gift that allows me connection to other people. I think another part of that is the beauty and the wisdom and the brilliance of the book, The Four Agreements.
Okay.
That I recommend to everyone.
Okay. I haven't read it. I've heard of it, but
I have the mini version.
Don Miguel Ruiz wrote it, and it's gorgeous. And one of the practices or the beliefs, the commitments we make to ourselves is don't take anything personally. The understanding that nothing is about you.
Game changer.
Yeah, game changer. The people's actions are always for themselves. They're about themselves, intentionally or unintentionally, consciously or unconsciously. People are always revealing to you who they are. If somebody doesn't invite you to something, they're telling you something about them. If somebody doesn't give you the compliment you had hoped to have heard, they're telling you something about them. If somebody says something critical, they're telling you something about them. People really aren't coming at us. It just feels that way because it's directed to us. So I think that's a really helpful tool to stay in consideration of and stay committed to. And again, it's all practice. Keep coming back to not taking anything personally. And this is another of his 4 agreements, not making assumptions. I think it's really easy for us in moments where we feel hurt or wounded to create a whole story about what was going on for the other person and why they acted in the particular way that we feel like caused us harm. But we are making that shit up. We're making it up. We could make up a million different stories. We just pick that one and get really committed to that's their reality. And it does such a disservice to them and to us because who knows why, but what we do know is it's about them. If I tell you, you're really getting on my nerves, I'm annoyed by you, I'm really getting on my own nerves, I'm really annoyed by me. And you're just holding up this mirror that allows me to see that. And I'm projecting it onto you and slingshotting it over there because I don't want to recognize that within myself because I can't look at it. I'm just overwhelmed by the idea that I'm self-annoying. So we have to hold that the truth in mind. And the other piece that helps me is that our souls are on this planet in transformation, right? I believe that we're becoming closer to love. We're becoming closer to kindness. We're becoming closer to these ideals that would cultivate peace on our planet. Oneness, right? And so if somebody else in their own journey bumps up against us in a way that is allowing them to grow and evolve, that's actually none of our business. And we can get wounded by it and we can get hurt by their action. And we do because we're human. But the spiritual part of us has an opportunity to let what they did or said or didn't do or say be between them and the God of their understanding. To not take it on as though it's about us. To let their journey continue to unfold. To hope the best for them. But to not take it on and allow it to stop us in our own tracks and in our own evolution to becoming more loving. And if we can begin to see that souls are just figuring it out, we're all in Earth School, we all have our own curriculum. If they bump up against us, there's something in there for us to see, to heal, to grow, to evolve. And if we stay stuck in the story of victim, they did this to me, they said this to me, I'm hurt, that's okay. We can be kind and compassionate to ourselves and give ourselves some tenderness and not stay with it for too long, because it stops us from being able to process through what's in there for me to understand about myself. Do I need to develop more empathy? Do I need to set better boundaries? Do I just need better friends? Do I need to date somebody else? Is this guy actually a jerk? Whatever it is. To be able to move forward and understand my own soul is evolving.
Yeah, it sounds like really, truly a spiritual practice to act in self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others. And I'm so glad that you mentioned, because I was having that thought too of like, well, what if I do need to, set a boundary with somebody? And I guess it's giving you the attention or focus on a person or yourself or an event to decide. You say this a lot, Julian, to either like let go or to like take action on something. And like sometimes maybe it's a little bit of both, I guess.
I think so. We should do another podcast sometime about boundaries. Just in general. It's a complete topic on its own. But again, I love that idea that if being in your presence threatens my ability to forgive you, I can't be in your presence. Well, that's a boundary that has to be set. If you're continuing to be hurtful to me, then I'm co-creating my own wounding through you. So if someone's hurtful and they're showing you this is who they are, yes, that's absolutely an opportunity to set a boundary for yourself to not continue to be wounded again and again.
So good.
Wow. Yes, we would love to hear maybe any other resources and how clients can work with you and all of that good stuff. But real quick, Melody, we're going to pause and give a shout out to our sponsor, Therapy Space.
Yes, we love Therapy Space. So they're located in Nashville and Dallas now, and they are mental health offices for mental health practitioners. So they have everything that you need to create a private practice, down to the coffee, the printer, the paper, the waiting room,
the Kleenex.
The Kleenexes. We love that about them.
I just bought some in bulk, by the way.
Okay, good. We always forget that. But it makes having a private practice easy. And they have flexible leases. So you can have 1 day a week in their offices up to 7 days a week. So they're super flexible if you are starting out in private practice or if you're experienced private practice mental health therapist and just don't want the responsibility of it all.
Yes. And if you mention hearing them on our podcast, you get 1 month's free rent, which is just super generous.
Yeah.
So thank you, Therapy Space.
Yeah. So Melody, I'm curious, just before we close out, what would you tell your younger self about forgiveness? If you could go 7 years back, and you could share something with Melody, younger Melody, what would you say to her?
I'm only going back 7 years because I'd be 35.
Okay, sorry, I was thinking about the 7 years it took you to forgive yourself, but yes, your younger version of yourself.
But yoga does keep you looking young. I'm just going to say.
It's hilarious. I'm not that young, so I'd probably say the same thing. We're all as young as a mindset, right?
Yes.
But if I could have set up, my little pumpkinhead teenage girl self or middle school girl self, I might have said something like what I was speaking to earlier, that you don't have to earn forgiveness. It's not something that through action, through volunteer work or some kind of penance, you get to access, that it is available to you in spades. It's eternally available to you, and it's always available in the now. In the present moment. So recognizing that everything that has already occurred cannot be changed. Don't waste your time trying to go back and unwind. That's a prison. It's a mental prison, an emotional prison. Instead, stay with right now. Stay with this very moment and recognize, who do you want to be now? How do you want to show up now for yourself and for the people around you and for the planet as a whole? And through one step at a time, one moment at a time, one new action at a time, you can become the kind of person that you're proud to be, that it's easy to forgive because you're not setting yourself up to have to do all that work of breaking down the residue of shame that you've created because of actions that feel out of alignment to you. So I think that's what I would say to her. She's clearly a very wise adolescent and would get all of that.
She is really developed.
Yeah, so mature, emotionally mature.
Yes. Oh my goodness. But really, thank you for sharing your story and your heart and helping others connect with themselves and the forgiveness that is a birthright and is available at every moment. How can others get in contact with you and stay up to date on all that you have to offer?
Yeah, and I hope you will. The easiest way is directly through my website. It's drmelodymore.com. I'm sure you'll link it in the show notes.
Yes.
There is an ebook about unlocking your brilliance and the possibilities within you there. So if you give me your email address, you can download that automatically. I'm also so excited to be launching a course on self-approval. It's called Self-Approval is Your Superpower. And it's going to be 10 weeks. It'll start in September this fall. So get on the wait list for that, because I feel like in my experience, it is one thing that especially women give away. And self-approval, really, our capacity to make decisions from our gut wisdom and from our own heart's desires, helps us to create a life that we love and cherish and love being in. So I'm so excited about launching that course.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'll be signing
We will
up.
be there. So
You have a VIP waiting list, so we'll sign up.
And maybe we could do a podcast like right before the launch or something too.
That would be
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Melody. I really needed this podcast. I just haven't been my best self the past week. So I really needed to hear all the things that you said. And I know our listeners will really appreciate it too.
Yeah. And I love the compassion that you just said that with. It's compassionate. I just haven't been my best self. You're allowed to be a learner. You're allowed to not be your best self, right? That's the practice of compassion in all moments. I love it. Thank you, JC. Thank you, Julianne. Again, happy birthday.
Oh, you're so wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you soon, Melody.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everyday Therapy Podcast. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes and share with your friends. It really helps us reach more people.
We might only record once a week, but we're with you every day.